Hi, I'm Alex, a digital content producer for DoxyMe. Before we get into today's episode about Brandon's trip to Ukraine after the war with Russia began, I wanted to note that there's a person in this story who wishes to remain unnamed. We have censored their name everywhere it appears within the interview, so if you hear a cut in dialogue or a beep, that's why. Enjoy the episode.
As I was watching my Ukrainian team being impacted by this, watching the news, first of all, I had that sense of frustration and anger against Russia for doing this. It was extremely unjust. To see the impact that's having on my people and the people of Ukraine, it was sad, it was hurtful, and I felt like we have to help these people. And at DoxyMe, there were several things that we did to help them. First is nobody on the team is being laid off, so everybody's going to keep their job, full pay, for as long as necessary. So they don't have to worry about money. We've also provided $1,000 as just to help them move to get to wherever they need to go, to help with expenses along the way. And I believe they also did an advance for 1 month as well, just to provide more resources for them to help them. We've done things like the Lviv apartments for people to stay at, and so as a company, we were doing a lot. We were matching their donations, and when it first hit, we were like, okay, activate that plan, make sure everybody's safe. Okay, do you guys have all the resources you need? You guys are good. Okay, and okay, how can we help? And so it went from first make sure people are safe. Once we were set there, then it was just like, okay, how can we help? Okay, donating money. We're gonna coordinate things and help people get out of the country if necessary. So helping in various ways. And even though we were doing all these things, I still felt like it wasn't enough, and that I wanted to do more. And I felt kind of helpless. Like I was just like, what else can I do? I made a post on Facebook. I have a Ukrainian flag that I've been flying at my house, but it still is just like it's not enough, right? And I don't want to just like sit back and like, oh, it's affecting my team personally. People I know personally and love personally are being impacted by this. And when I heard that I had a couple people on my team who've volunteered to go back and to serve in the Ukrainian armed forces, and really put their lives on the line, and I said, that is courage, that is bravery. If they are willing to put their lives on the line to go and defend their country, their freedom and their liberty, the least I can do is to go there to Ukraine with supplies and just show that I stand in solidarity with them. And so I kind of like came up with came up with the idea of like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna just go and help on the ground there. I don't know what I can do. I don't know if I can get into Ukraine. So it was about Tuesday that I decided. I looked at the flights to Poland, and I was talking to people like, "Hey, if I came, is there things to do?" And I was getting kind of mixed messages, like, "Yeah, I mean, you could pick up supplies in Warsaw and drive it to the border." And I was like, "Maybe I can get first aid kit." And I'm like, "What do you guys need?" And there's different things that they needed, but a lot of that stuff is already being delivered, and so it's like, what would I really be an impact? I was on the fence. I was like, I just don't want to go and just be in the way. So I was getting opinions from other people and just kind of like, am I being crazy here or is this something good? And I was talking to one of the members of my team on the ground, and I was just like, are there things you can, are there things that I could bring from the United States? And what tipped it over the edge was she's like, do you have any way to get body armor or ammunition? And she's like, we can't get it here, and and people really need body armor. A lot of the people in the armed services really need body armor. We can't get it here. And that's when I was just like, yes, I actually think I can get body armor. And so I called up the local military supply store and I said, hey, I'm thinking about going to Ukraine. Do you guys have body armor? Yeah, we have plates and tactical vests and stuff like that. and then I did a quick search. Can I travel with body armor, right? And apparently you can. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going. I'm gonna buy a bunch of body armor, military supplies, take it over there with me, and I'll see how far I can get with it. Okay, and so on the way, I already had my stuff packed. So the night before, I'd already packed to go and had everything I need, passport, everything. So if I was ready to go, I was ready to go. If not, then okay, I'll just unpack. So I get done the meeting. I called up and just I called my dad. Said I'm definitely going. He said, "Okay, be safe. Whatever, and we'll help you do this." And I said, and so I had people on the U.S. side. I said, "I need a hotel in Krakow, and I needed a rental car. Can you book those for me?" So I had people booking things for me while I was traveling to the airport to catch this flight. On the way to the airport, there's an Army Navy surplus store just a mile or two away. I went in there and I said, "Get a bunch of stuff ready." I called him on the phone. "Get a bunch of stuff ready. I'm going to Poland or Ukraine to deliver this stuff, and I need body armor." And so we packed up. So we went to the store. My wife and I. We packed up 2 full army sacks full of military things, and I'm like, I was kind of like a kid in the candy shop. I'm like, okay, what do we got here, right? So I'm like, body armor. There's vests. There's a helmet. What else? We got the camouflage that you throw over things that hides it. There was night vision goggles that we got, and it's just like, what random stuff could they have a hard time getting that we have here easy we can get, and so it's just a bunch of military blankets and which is just a bunch of random stuff that is just like this they could potentially use this, right? And so we packed up these 2 bags full of body armor and all this stuff. They were just like heavy, and I like took 2 hands to carry them. And that was my that was my checked luggage, right? So we go to the airport and kiss my wife goodbye and bring the stuff in, drop it off, and just under the weight. Apparently, you can fly with 70-pound bags internationally, and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And so I actually could have fit more in there. I didn't realize I was worried it was gonna be too heavy. And so, yep, just checked it. They didn't have any concern. Got on the flight, and essentially, like I told 1 or 2 people when I was like on the way there in Ukraine, said, "Hey, I'm coming." By the way. I didn't give any details where I was going to go, where I was going to be, when I was going to see them. I just said I'm coming, and I flew into. I was supposed to fly into Krakow, but the day before I left, they actually changed the flight to fly into Warsaw, and then I would take another flight down to Krakow. That was very important that happened, that flight was canceled, because I flew into Amsterdam, and then on the way to when I was in Amsterdam, I got a message from Heath saying, "Hey, there's this guy looking for a ride to the Polish border, and would you be willing to give him a ride?" And I said, "Yeah, sure," but he's in Warsaw, and I'm like, "Well, I'm going. I mean, my final flight is going to Krakow, but I'm going through Warsaw. Maybe I can just get out there." And so he connected us on Telegram, and I was just like, "Yeah, it'd be nice to go with somebody else who's trying to get to the border as well, so I'm not doing this alone." And so I said, "Yeah, you know what? I'm actually going to get out at Warsaw, and I'll meet you. And we'll rent a car, and we'll drive to the border." So I get to the rental car place, and the guy's like, I talked to the guy on the phone, and he's a Brit, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm from Britain, and I just want to come drive refugees out of the country, out of Ukraine, to the border." And he's part of this organization called Ukraine Now, and I think it was just something that somebody invented like in the last couple of weeks, and their job was to go in and bring refugees out. They hadn't been set up for very long, and they were pretty disorganized. And so they essentially said, "Hey, we need drivers." And he's like, "All right, I'm going." And he flies to Warsaw, and they're like, "Okay, well, just rent a car and drive into Ukraine and go pick people up." okay. And so I'm like, well, or if you're going to go there, and I'm going there, let's like team up and just drive together. So I go to the ticket counter, the rental place, and like, yeah, I'm here to get a van. They're like, yeah, there's no vans available in the city. Like, well, this charity organization's already reserved them. Like, no, they haven't. Like, there's nothing here. So I'm like, what? And we couldn't get a hold of anybody in the states who had set this up, and it was kind of chaotic, and 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 I already had a rental car reservation, but it was an SUV, but they'd given it away because it was late or whatever, and so they're like, "Well, we can put you in a BMW," and I'm like, "I don't want to drive to the border in a BMW, right? Like, we need something that could be useful to carry stuff." So I wasn't even sure what I was doing, but I was like, "Okay," so I rented a car, and I was able to get kind of like a crossover type car, so it's a little bit more space, but not quite an SUV. Rented a car, and I went and met with this Brit named and uh, and so we met up, and he was at a hostel. He had been there for a day or so. Actually, he was in Krakow. I went up to Warsaw trying to get a car, wasn't able to get it, and so met up with him and in Warsaw, and he was just like, let's go to the border, and that night we just said okay, and we stopped by a store and like a department store, and I bought a bunch of first aid kits. I said, what else can I get? So I had all the stuff I brought from the States. What else can I buy? I bought a bunch of first aid kits, and I saw when I was at this department store, I saw some flowers, and one of the flowers was a peace lily, and so I bought a peace lily to take to Ukraine, and I don't know what I was going to do with it, but I bought that peace lily. We threw all the stuff in the car, and we just started driving towards the border. It was about a 4 hour drive, 4 or 5 hour drive to the border. We knew we wouldn't be able to cross because of the curfew and stuff. So let's just get close, and then let's stay at a hotel, and then get up in the morning and hit the border. Then, while I was waiting for the rental car, I ran into this other guy who was also American. He was a Chinese American, and his wife was Ukrainian in Ukraine, and he was living in LA. And he flew from LA to Poland, was also renting a car so he could drive to pick his wife up in Ukraine and bring her out. And so we met, we exchanged our phone numbers, and we chatted. This was important because he that night also drove to the border and in his rental car, and um, that morning, no, it was in the middle of the night. He he was told that he couldn't drive his rental car into Ukraine because he wasn't the registered owner of the rental car. He couldn't drive that across the border, and we're like, crap. And of course, nobody on the Ukraine Now organization had any idea that this was a rule. So Saturday morning, we're at a hotel in Lublin, Poland, and we're like, crap, we can't drive this rental car across the border. And so I'm like, well, that's fine. I don't have to go to Ukraine, but I can leave the stuff at the border. But he was like, no, I came here to go help people in Ukraine. I need to find a way in. Well, maybe we can buy a car. We can buy a van or something and drive across the border. And so he started getting on his phone and searching, and he found a van in Poland for like $3,000. And this like big, like a big working van. You put stuff in, and he found a guy, and he's contacted a bunch of different people who were selling these vans. He found one, and it's about an hour north. And so we drove up, checked out this van. It's this big old van, and it's great for what he's trying to do. He wanted to drive people around, deliver stuff, and this is like perfect. It's an old beat up van. It's only a couple $1,000, and it had like something crazy like 340,000 miles on it already. And so we talked to this guy. He doesn't speak any English, but his son spoke English. And so we were like, he was translating for us. And, the van wouldn't start. So they switched out the batteries from another van that he had into this one and started it. And he had to like pump the gas in order to get it to work. We'll find a hotel we can stay at. And we'll stay there the night and then drive across the border in the morning. We get there, and that's the first stop in Poland after the border, and so it was full of refugees and people like us coming here. There's a last stop in Poland before you go to Ukraine. So you have people coming out of Ukraine, staying there, and then you have people going into Poland like us, staying there. And it was this probably quiet, sleepy village was a madhouse. And there's McDonald's is packed. People, you could tell that they're like there's less chance to get internet or get some good food or whatever before going across. You see people with the press. There's a refugee camp that's right there. It's just a lot of stuff. Busy. People, a lot of people around, a lot of other vans, and we were going to different hotels. And hey, no vacancy, no vacancy. We probably went to like 5 or 6 hotels, all booked, no vacancy. I'm like, crap. What are we gonna do? Well, maybe we'll just like sleep in the van tonight. And then he's like, I think Ukraine now, his organization he's part of, I think they rented an Airbnb around here. So we're like, let's look into that. And of course, he's asking about it. Nobody's responding or whatever. But then we're like, oh yeah, it's in a town about an hour south of Shemishel, and we're like, and it's close to the border too. So we're like, okay, let's maybe what we could do is go down, stay at that Airbnb, cross the border there. So I left the rental car there. And then we jumped in the van, brought all the stuff over into the van, and drove down to that Airbnb, which is actually close to a ski resort. So it was like this little lodge next to a ski resort down in Poland. We had no idea it's a ski resort either. We are just like, oh, cool, great. So it was like a room that was rented for this charity or this foundation for people to stay at, for drivers to stay at and whatnot. A couple miles from the border. We're like, great. So we got down there. It was like 11:30 by the time we got down there. And just crashed there. So it was nice. We had a nice warm place to stay. Didn't have to sleep in the car. They provided food in the morning. That morning, we're like, all right, 8 o'clock in the morning, let's go. We start going, and the van wouldn't start. Like, what? Like what? Crap. We're like pumping the gas. I'm and we're like, oh no. But fortunately, we after probably 5-10 minutes, it was cold down there too. 5-10 minutes of doing this, we didn't want to drain the battery. It finally started. We're like, great, awesome. And so we had all this stuff. The guy who owned the place, or a relative of the person who owned the place, he was also driving back and forth to the border every day and dropping off supplies and picking people up. But he didn't go across the border. He just went back and forth the border. So he's like, you guys are going into Lviv? Like, you guys are crazy kind of look. And like, yeah, we're Brit and American. We don't know what we're doing. We're just kind of crazy. He's like, okay, well, and so he had this humanitarian sign that was in Polish and Ukrainian. And he gave us a copy and said, here, put this in your window. That'll help. And so we did that, and we got off in the morning. And on the way to the border, we see like a couple other vans and this like this little pit stop off to the side of the road where there's a bunch of boxes of stuff. And we see people with vans and stuff like that. So we like stopped, we turned around and went back, and we had an empty van. And we're like, do y'all need us to take some of this stuff in? And they're like, you going in? And we're like, yeah, I'm happy to take it. They're like, yeah, sure. And there's a bunch of Germans. So so apparently they had boxes, a whole tractor trailer full of supplies like blankets and pillows and mattresses and clothes, everything you can imagine. It was donated by Germans and is dropped off here, and they just couldn't get it across the border. And so we're like, we're going across, we're going into Lviv, just pack it up. So we packed up this van full of boxes of all this stuff, and packed it to the brim. And they were like, awesome, thanks, right? And they were just trying to get it to the border and then trying to get somebody else on the border to take the rest of the way, and they were having trouble with that. But we're like, yeah, we'll just take it in. So we filled up this van stuff. We go up to the border and get it to the border. I mean, there are cars parked, for quite a ways away from the border. So people parked there and went in. So we were able to drive right up, and went to the security guard, and they're like, what do you want to do? And like, yeah, we're gonna go across. And like, okay, there's 2 people here that need a ride across the border. Can you take them? We're like, yeah, sure, jump on in. And so it was a Ukrainian woman, and her French husband who lived in the Netherlands. And so they spoke English. She was going across the border to pick up her sick mother, who was on the other side. And so she was at the end of her life, and they just were worried that she would even make it here. So she was worried. She wanted to see her and bring her back to them, but they couldn't drive across, and nor could they walk across, but they could ride across. And so there's 4 of us in this van. We're all like crunched up. Oh, and by the way, doesn't have a driver's license because he had lost it, and so that was part of where he needed a ride, because I I had a driver's license, so he couldn't drive in Poland, but he got to Ukraine. It didn't matter because it's like whatever. There's no law, right? And so he's like, once I get to Ukraine, I can drive around, but I can't drive in Poland. So I'm like driving across the border. There's four of us in here in this van, crammed up, and uh, and of course we're waiting in line. The line took. There's only like three cars in front of us, but each one took like 30 minutes. It's like what in the world? So on the Polish side, they finally get to us, and none of us speak Polish. Um, but they're like, we're going to Lviv. But fortunately, the woman that's with us spoke Ukrainian, and you can kind of understand a little bit of this stuff. And I think he might have spoke Ukrainian as well, but the security, the border guard, but he was kind of grumpy. I can imagine, talking to people all day long, and and so we're like, well, he needs to see the papers, and so we show the papers, and we're like, yeah, we just bought this van, and he's like looking at this stuff, and he's just like he's getting really aggressive and like upset, like what the like and he's like she's like, do you guys have insurance on this? And we're like, no, we just bought this yesterday. We don't have car insurance. And so she told him, he's like, you can't be driving. He's essentially saying, you can't be driving without insurance. Like, this is crazy, And we're like, sorry, we just bought this yesterday. We didn't have time to get insurance. And we didn't even register it in our name. We just had a bill of sale and written in Polish from the guy who we bought it from saying, yeah, he bought this today. And we're just kind of like, sorry. And, just like stupid Americans and Brits, they don't know what they're doing, right? So, but so they go and he just like takes our passports and just stamps off, and we're like, they don't let us across, and we see what's happening before us, where they're like checking they're checking the boxes of the car in front of us, and where are you going? And we saw that guy got pulled off to the side, and we were kind of overhearing the conversation, and they're like, do you have a contact person? Do you have where are you going? What's the address you're going to? He didn't have that. And so they're like, you can't go in without this. And so we were like, oh, do we have somebody? And so he started like contacting the people, Chris started contacting the people that he was connected with. But again, this is in the morning at the border of Ukraine, Poland. It's in the middle of the night in the United States. So nobody was responding. And even the people on the Ukrainian side that could have responded weren't. And so we're like, what do we do? You know what I mean? So, and we're like, crap. So we got to figure that part out. But we say, oh, we're here for humanitarian aid. They check our boxes and make sure that okay, there's we're not smuggling anything like body armor. So they check that. The Polish guard comes back and he had everything in the pack. And he just hands it to me without saying anything and just walks off. Like we're like, does that mean we can go? And so we're like yeah, let's just kind of go. And so we go. Then we go to the Ukrainian side, which is right next door, and they're like, yeah, where are you going? What do you need to do? What are you trying to do? And we're like, yeah, we're here to deliver supplies to Lviv, and still we weren't able to get a hold of his contact. So I had to call my team and contacted Lisa, who's at the hub, and I said, Lisa, hey, I'm at the border and I need somebody to vouch for me that I'm coming to visit them. She's like, okay. What I mean? Actually, it wasn't a phone, it was a telegram. She's like, okay. And so she gave her phone number and the security guard talked to her and she was able to confirm, yeah, I know him. This is where we're at. This is what they're doing, stuff like that. So it worked out very well. But I was really hoping to show up with all this stuff without like telling them. So they got tipped off a couple hours ahead that I was actually going to be coming to them. So it did, the whole process of getting into the country probably took about an hour, hour and a half, and I'm just like, gosh, it took a long time to get across the border. Fortunately, we had the woman who spoke Ukrainian because she could translate and explain what's going on. That she's going to pick up her mom, and they're going to deliver supplies. And I think without that, we would have had a much harder time trying to communicate what we're doing. And so just like things just kind of fell in place perfectly for everything to happen the way it did. But yeah, we finally got across the border, and as we were at the final gate to cross, and got the spikes, and we had to wait for it to go across for them to check our visa or whatever. She sees her mother in line, and the woman sees her mother, so she gets out. She's like, "Oh my gosh!" And she's like waving, and she's like running, and like you can't be running here, like you got to like be checked. And so this guard came and checked, and thank God, so she was able to see her mother, be reunited with her, and very happy. And then we were went on. So that was really nice to be part of that and help her get her mother and get across the border. And then from there, we took off, and we go to a Ukrainian gas station. Our tire in our van was kind of going flat, and we go to the first gas station, and yeah, it's just like nobody speaks English, and we're like, fill it up, and they're like, what? We're like, oh my gosh, just yeah, like what did you say? You know what I mean? And then the other thing is like our internet doesn't work yet because we're in Ukraine, so it's a different cell. You got to have the SIM card, and so we were using translations, but it's using Google, and now that didn't work anymore. So we're like, and so finally we were able to communicate. And then he's pointing at the tire, and he's like, fill up the tire. We're like, yes, and so he helped us with that. And it's just like, oh my gosh, yeah, we got to get to a place where we get people who speak Ukrainian. So, but we drove, and it's about a 2.5 hour drive from the border to Lviv, and you're driving through the countryside, and it's really beautiful. You see a lot of like these Orthodox churches all over the place, the buildings. So many houses with like chickens in the yard and like little gardens that they're growing things, and just this quiet village life and farmland, and just very beautiful. And that part of the country is hilly, so we could see that. Along the way, there were various like checkpoints, military checkpoints, but we just kind of show humanitarian van, and they just kind of pass you through. At the border, there was a pretty long line of people trying to get through, both on foot, uh, but also in cars. And so it probably went a couple kilometers, the queue for the cars to get through the border, and it was not moving fast at all. I mean, you see people just sitting outside their car because it hasn't moved in a while, and you can just imagine how long it will take to get through in their car. It's just and I have pictures and videos of all this, and but yeah, we drove in to Lviv. Nice drive. Some roads are like smooth, but some are definitely like bumpy and rough. But there's a pretty steady caravan of buses and vans going back and forth between the borders. So we weren't the only people doing this, and you see military checkpoints and yeah, various things. We never felt a danger in this ride, but as we got closer to Lviv, there became more checkpoints, and there was even like a barricade that all the traffic getting into Lviv, they kind of barricaded the city on all the roads, and so that the roads lead into that barricade backed up, and so it took probably a half hour to get through that traffic jam. Going through the barricade, you can only go through the barricade one vehicle at a time, so you have like 3 or 4 roads coming into one barricade, and there you have to like weave around the barricades, and you have security guards, you have military with guns, and the sandbags with camo, but also they had those. You kind of see them. They're the tank stoppers. They're like those metal things. You see those kind of all over the place. So we went through that, and once we got into the city, it was like a city, and people are moving about, and we drove to the apartment, and well, this is where the Lviv flat was for the company, and we and so I was able to. I knew where the address was. So we drove right up, and I was able to get in, and the like there was a gate to go to park in the parking lot, and so we didn't have the thing. So I'm like, crap. Well, I knew the apartment, so I was able to get into the apartment because somebody was coming out. And I jumped in, and then I go into it's this old apartment, probably built back during the Soviet era. I get into the elevator, and I'm like, I think it's apartment number 32, but like there's 10 floors, and it's not the third floor, and 30 is pretty high. So I'm like, it's probably like at the top because like each floor had about 5 apartments. So I kind of calculated. I'm like, all right, and so I pressed the button 10, and nothing happened. Like what? Like, well, I don't know. Maybe I need one of those passes to get the elevator to work. So I actually had to run up 9, 10 flights of stairs because I couldn't get the elevator to work. So I get to the top, and I finally like, okay, apartment 32. I'm like huffing and puffing, and I, I think I text. She's like, "Where you at?" Or I don't know. Or I knock on the door, and I hit the doorbell and she thought I was at the bottom of the building. She's like, "Oh, we'll come right down and let you in." And she opens the door and I'm standing right there. And so this is Lisa. And she's like, "Oh, Brandon!" So we hugged, and there are a bunch of other people from the team there and their families, and so um, I, and it was great to see them, to hug them, and to be there. And I said, "Hey, I need to pass." We went down, we parked the van, we came up. When I came back, it was really good to just see everybody, to hug them, and they had their kids there. And one of our developers, Andre, his son was there, and his son didn't no idea who I was. He came up and he's wanted to play, so I'm playing with him. They have a dog, a lab. He was shaking his tail and wanted to play fetch, and it felt very much like a normal life and family and just happiness and just reuniting with friends, and it's just good to see old acquaintances. Like, this is awesome. And it was warm, and it was safe, and it was clean, and they had food, and it felt very much like a family gathering. And that was a feeling that was felt when I was there. And people come like, "Oh, hey," just seeing people that it's been a while since I've seen them. And it was just so much fun just to be there and reconnect. And we go and bring up all the military supply, the bags of military supplies, and we bring it up there and we spread it up. We open it up, we spread it out, and they're like, "You can get this stuff." They're like looking at the ammo and they're like body armor, and they're trying it on. They're like, "You can buy this stuff? This is crazy." And they're like, "Wow." There's like the helmet, and they're like trying it on. They're just amazed that like you can get this stuff. You can just like go to the store and buy it. So it was a good reunion. They brought out food and drinks, and we just reconnecting. But they, I was talking to them, and the apartment is actually 2 stories, and so we went upstairs, and they had a nice balcony that looks out over the city. And so we were up there, and I took time and talking to them about their experience, and what they're doing, and sharing different things, and how they're living. I was able to see, and there were only 3 bedrooms, but there were 11, 12 people there, and so they had beds on the floor that people would stay at. But the apartment was set up great, because it had everything that was necessary just to survive and make do during this time. There were washer and dryer, there was a full kitchen, there was bathrooms, and everything that you need to be safe and comfortable. And they were very much safe and comfortable there. So it was really good to see that, and to be there for them. And then after that, they wanted to show where they go and do volunteer work every day. Most of them go down to this distribution center where supplies are delivered, and then distributed to refugees or throughout the country. And it's actually this old museum, and so they wanted to show me that, and then show parts of Lviv, the historic part of Lviv. So and then we had the van full of supplies that we had to deliver, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll take that as well," and distribute it there. And so we got our stuff, and we drove down there to downtown. And at the time we wanted to deliver it, it was like 5 o'clock in the evening, and there's just too much. It was too busy at that time to take any more supplies. So we said, "Come back in about an hour." So we had somebody on the inside who was just saying, "Yeah, come back in about an hour," or whatever. So we just, Chris and I and Lisa, we went out, we walked around the downtown area of Lviv, and we went and grabbed some food at a traditional Ukrainian restaurant. It's actually kind of cool. So Lviv, you're walking around there, you wouldn't think that a war is going on in their country. It's very normal. There were a lot of people, but it's normal. Like the stores were open, the shops were open, people were eating, people were walking, taking pictures, and it was very much, it felt normal, and people weren't living in fear. It's just they were living their normal lives there. And we went to this Ukrainian restaurant. It was really interesting. She's like, "This is a place you have to go," and you go in, and there's like this like it's part of the decor, but it's just through this door, and there's this like old, fat Ukrainian like guy dressed in like military stuff, and you have to say Slava Ukrainia, which is glory to Ukraine, and then you have to say back I can't remember, but it's just glory to the heroes in Ukrainian, and that's how you're able to pass down and go down, and then you go down these stairs. It's a tight little stairs, and you go down into this basement, and it's like this little place. It's a bunker. It's essentially a bunker, And you go down there, and that's in the restaurant. It's like wood, and they had a TV up there and stuff like that, and just a couple tables. And but there's like four sets of these bunkers where tables are at, and this is where you eat. And so there's this restaurant, and they bring out traditional Ukrainian food. And so we had borsk, and we had different meat, and then different things. And Lisa, she just ordered everything. So Lisa, give us the traditional Ukrainian meal, and we had like their traditional. It's like this like cold drink with different herbs or whatever in it, and it's uh, um, and then the borsk and different things that had the meat, and so it was great. It was a great traditional meal, and it's warm and cozy and safe down there, and but so that was nice to have. And then after that, we got back in the van and we drove to that distribution center, parked the van, and then they came and just helped us unload it. We unloaded the boxes, and they were able to show this where they work, and they spend a couple hours a day. All of them there spend a couple hours a day volunteering, and they vans are constantly bringing in supplies, and then they have to go, and they each floor has different things. And so the first floor had baby supplies, the basement had medical supplies. You go up to the second floor, and it had clothes, and it had another room had more like bedding stuff, like mattresses and sleeping bags and stuff for sleeping. And then another room was just a whole room full of bags of just clothes that they hadn't even got to yet. And so all these rooms, and this is like an old art museum that there was no art in there. It was just kind of this old empty building that they had just kind of used as a great staging area because they could have tons and tons of supplies of things that were needed. And so as things came in, they figured out what it was, and then they took it to the right area. And then as people needed things, they would go up and they would get what they. So if somebody needed a sleeping bag, they'd go up. They know where the sleeping bags are. They'd grab it and then bring it down and give it to them. And so that's how this works. So in and out, stuff coming in, stuff going out as needed. And then the first floor, they also had like a little area where there were women making food, sandwiches, and drinks. And so if you were hungry as workers, you could eat and have things taken care of, so you can focus. And there's like a registration centers. People wanted to volunteer, and they were so overwhelmed with people volunteering that they had to put a registration because there's so many people just kind of coming. There's chaotic. They had to create a registration, and they've actually had to stop. They've had to turn people away because so many people have wanted to volunteer, which is incredible. The country's invaded, but there's so many people that wanted to help and to serve others that they had to turn people away. But we were able to get in because we knew people on the inside, and so we helped unload the boxes. We helped take the boxes to the different parts of the place, and it was really good to see that, to see where they're spending their time. And that's one of the things that Lisa, when you talk to her, she required that, hey, if you're staying here at the Lviv apartment, you can't just sit around and feel sorry for yourself. You have to go serve. You have to go help other people. And so she required them and said, no, you guys have to serve and help. But I think it's part of what has helped them through this difficult time is to serving others and to helping, and because they're passionate about it. They love it. That's one of their favorite things to do is to go help and to serve down at that center. And so after that, it was kind of about late at night. It's about 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I was just like, my plan was to actually get out that night. So get in, drop off the stuff, see everybody, hug them or whatever, and then catch a train out. And I checked on the internet, and there were definitely trains available and stuff like that. So she's like, all right. I caught a ride with Lisa and a couple of the others down to, so I said goodbye to everybody at the place, and I said, all right, I'm going to go catch a train.
All right, I'm back again to summarize the rest of Brandon's trip. It was pretty uneventful. With his rental car in Poland, he was able to leave Ukraine on foot with the help of some colleagues. In doing so, he passed the massive queues of refugees trying to flee the country, who could not leave as easily because they needed a car or didn't have the same resources Brandon had access to. He lamented the reality that made it so easy for himself to leave, but so difficult for so many others. Then he and Mary reflected upon all the amazing people he met on his journey that made it possible for him to even get into Ukraine. His British traveling partner, the Asian American man who shared invaluable knowledge about crossing the border, the couple who talked to the angry Polish border guard who didn't speak English. As if guided by fate, he met the right people at the right time at every step of the journey. Now I'm going to give the floor back to him so he can explain, in his own words, just how proud he is to have these amazing Ukrainians as teammates and friends.
It was on that flight back. I was in the airport where I started to craft this message for, like, I was thinking about all the things that I had experienced and what my team had experienced, and I was just like, I need to share this message with this world. And I first formulated how the team there are really the heroes. They're the courageous ones. They're the ones that are staying firm in their country at their own risk because this is their country and they want to defend their freedom. They're the ones who are coordinating supplies and helping the refugees and helping the people in need. They're the ones who are signing up and serving and volunteering to serve in the military to protect their country. They're the true heroes. And along the way, like, wow, it's so great that you came. It's so courageous of you. It's just like, it's not about me. This experience is really to highlight them and the things that they're doing, the things that they've done. And so I started to kind of craft this message, and I really got this deep sense of how truly proud I was to have Ukrainian people on my team. And I said, no, we are going to fight for freedom. We're going to defend our country. We're going to help and serve others. How proud I am of them that they would do this, and how honored I am to call them my teammates and that they're able to be on my team. And it was just like, so I wrote this message of just truly how truly proud and honored I am that they are on my team. And it's just like, I got to do more to just magnify this voice of and let people know how amazing these people are, how they truly are. And that's what kind of got this idea going for doing a series where we're listening to their stories and then we're getting it out there. Because really, I can tell their story, well, how much better would it be for them to tell their story and hear it directly from them? And we have the means, we have the resources, we have the ability to gather these things together, gather these stories together, and to magnify that. And so that's where the idea on my flight home, I started pulling these ideas together, saying, no, we've got to do something here to magnify this voice. And I'm truly inspired by the team there and the things that they're doing. And they're the heroes. They're the ones who need to be honored. They're the courageous ones. And their stories need to be heard.